we're going to continue this conversation, and I'd love for Ateet and Brent to come on up. But Daniel teed up some important conversations about AI that we need to continue. Our next panel, we're going to have. Hey. Good to see you. We're going to have some experienced and seasoned CMOs. You can guess who those are, and the cool fintech guy who's at the leading edge. Kind of barbell this conversation. We're going to be talking about using AI to drive marketing innovation, optimization, and creativity in the enterprise. And the enterprise is kind of an operative word here because we work with established businesses, not startups in most cases, and steering that ship, redeploying talent, which we're going to talk about, actually getting these processes instantiated. It's difficult, not hard. So on paper, some of this stuff is really cool, but we're here to talk about how we can drive innovation, optimization, and creativity. So we're going to talk about AI across many dimensions. First, we're going to talk about how we're using it at every stage of the journey or the funnel or the bow tie in my picture. Daniel teed up, there are brand issues, demand issues, which are dysfunctional and not, and relationship expansion issues, which we've got to get to the core of because that's really where the money gets made. We also have processes and workflows that sit underneath that journey that really make it happen, and AI impacts that. I think a really important piece is talent. If you look at my digital marketing mix, humans are in there. We can talk about our allocation of search versus paid versus programmatic, but the humans are still there. And how do we develop them? How do we accelerate that development? I had Blackstone tell me that using their knowledge base, they can go from 0 to 60 in 3 weeks, whereas they would wait 3 years before they put someone in front of a good client. How do we rationalize that? Face it, marketing is in the bullseye of the jobs. Daniel just pointed out he can put whole creative agencies out of business with this if he wanted to, and redeploy. And I think that's a really important thing because I'm a glass half full person. And the unbounded creativity, and we're going to talk about augmentation here today. We're also going to talk about optimization. We heard a little about optimizing campaigns, but also offers and advertising and resource allocation. And so Daniel teed up a lot of this stuff. Testing, adapting, and learning. And Daniel teed up the fact that are we really learning or are we just testing? And then risk management, which is bedrock for everybody's industry. AI creates risk, but can also govern and mitigate risk. So that's a mouthful. And I'd like all of our panelists, right to left, to introduce themselves in two contexts, just to let you know who they are. And I have to go to my notes, I apologize, because this is highly scripted. We're airtight here. First, introduce yourself and what's your superpower? How are you using AI to augment and accelerate your unique go-to-market model, operations, talent? Just pick one. And then, as it relates to the agenda here, where's the scale and leverage that you see for AI? So AI is nice, it applies to everything, but where can you create scale and leverage? Because that's what really matters in an enterprise. So I hope that's a mouthful, but I want everyone to just kind of reveal their superpower and tell you a little bit about their unique business model so you can identify with them or at least counteract. Why don't we start off?
Okay, great. So I'm Brent Korte. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Ameritas Life Insurance Corp. I've been the CMO for 10 years, so I've managed to beat the curve, I think, in many respects. Our company is life insurance, wealth management, retirement plans. We also have a lot of group business on the employee benefit side, dental, vision, hearing, and a number of other businesses that we have. My organization is about 70 people, so we cover the entire company. I also have a corporate strategy role in there. And so, part of the, I guess, superpower is it concerns kind of what I do on the marketing and the strategy roles. One, I think the role of marketing has vastly changed with AI in that we now play lock and stock across the enterprise, inside and outside of marketing. We play in service, we play in sales, we play in optimization of operations, as well as marketing functions here. And so our role in kind of expanding that experience internally and externally is going to continue to grow. On the strategy side, and I know in here we have a lot of kind of technology partners as well as practitioners in the room. And so speaking to both of you, when we sit down as a senior executive team, we're looking at this from a couple of different fronts. What are the opportunities that AI and generative AI will give us to help us both create an efficient operation as well as growth opportunity? And what are the problems it creates? And the problems that we are really having to look at are, if you think about technology contracts and software costs, they traditionally have grown at about 7% a year. With generative AI coming in, they're growing at greater than 12% a year from an expense perspective as you renew contracts. What does your revenue grow at per year? Your revenue grows at probably 3 to 5% if you are lucky. This is a problem. The problem is that your technology costs are outgrowing your revenue growth. And so somewhere along the line, you as a senior team have got to figure out how you are going to bend that cost curve, going to create better unit costs, better economies of scale as an organization, and better growth opportunities in different markets and different opportunities. And this is also where marketing plays a significant role. How do we think about product development? How do we think about market development here? And so that is what, as an organization, we're looking at from opportunities. AI is actually going to help us in that front, and at the same time, it's something we're going to have to really be very thoughtful around how we engage with.
Ateet.
Awesome. Nice to meet everybody. Ateet Adhikari. I work at a company called Max My Interest. I'll keep it brief. We help match banks, that's on the kind of left side of our curve, with wealth advisors, and make sure that the highest net worth individuals are saving their money with higher yield. And so we have a network of banks offering high yield savings accounts for core deposits. Superpower, it's a good question. I get asked it a lot. This is my second job as this tech COO, and each time I kind of build a team, help scale it, grow it, and ultimately create some liquidity for our investors. AI is a huge part of that, because I think about talent, I think about individuals a lot. And I think for me, it's a lot of augmentation. I mean, we have team members who are incredibly talented, but we have a lot of manual tasks. You can imagine we're handling advisor inquiries and client inquiries and account transfer confirmations, all these manual tasks. And we respond to every single one of our clients within like 20 minutes. That's our goal, 20 minutes response times. The clients and advisors have questions. They want us to be their trusted resource for their cash for the high net worth individuals. So I think about AI as a tool that lets my team do a lot more human touch work. There's a lot of things that can be either automated or make it a lot better. Like I want my clients to write custom emails. I want them to feel personal. I want them to be proofread. To do that in 20 minutes means you're getting the ticket, you're responding, you're getting it checked, you're checking some data, you're doing a little research, and you're hitting send. If you can have the time to do that in 3 to 5 minutes because you're using a bit of tooling, the ability for you to respond and say, hey, I can also give you a call if that would be helpful. I'm happy to set up a Zoom with you and your client anytime if you're available. That human touch is something I'm trying to bring on my team, and letting tools, whether it's AI or other tools, really allow my team to be more human, because I think that's something we're gonna have space and time for if we're thinking about talent as augmented versus replaced with technology. And I'm trying to really double down on how do I encourage. I mean, we've recruited a great team of talented people, and how do I make sure that their value is still additive to the organization?
So taking a slightly different tack and responding to Steve's question. So Daniel Darst, Deputy CMO at Flagstar. Flagstar is a $100 billion bank. We emerged out of the merger of a mortgage origination bank called Flagstar, Detroit, New York Community Bank in metro area in New York. Merged, and we bought Signature Bank of New York, which had failed. Then we almost failed. Then we got acquired by Steve Mnuchin and his private equity friends, which has been, believe it or not, a phenomenal change. Who brought in a lot of talent, and the bank has kind of shape-shifted into a very strong C&I, commercial, regional commercial, corporate bank, treasury management, and private bank. And I'm in both of those camps. I'd say my superpower is human relationships, which has been absolutely essential for my success, and my survival, I should say, is being able to actually listen to people and know when to shut up. So I really mean that. I would say AI, and I think the talent topic is really interesting. I'd say part of what is critical is Brent's referring to it. We have a lot of legacy technology that we maybe brought on 3 years ago, and it's already obsolete, or it's already interfering with a customer experience that we want to put out there. And we've got too much stuff cluttering up the arteries, so to speak. So I think the efficient assessment of what's working and what's not working, where we want to go, I mentioned North Star in my opening talk, but I think that North Star changes a lot. I mean, getting to the North Star changes a lot. So from a strategy point of view, it's the other thing I would say is critical is that we have a lot of data. What products are, what are people looking for, whether it's, the Henrys or the super affluent or the blue collar, and we don't necessarily act on that because we're somewhat handcuffed by some of the technology and some of the product platforms that we grew up with, and even growing up with is like 5 years ago. So Stephen, back to you.
That's great. Let's dig in and start to unpack some of this stuff. So Brent and I had a conversation, and running a firm responsibly, he points out that it's very important to be precise about what AI can do. We tend to conflate AI as saving the world or not, destroying the world, creating risk. But we have to be very clear about what AI can eliminate, jobs and stupid work, what it can automate, low-levels tasks, what it can enable, what does a human do, like creative, that could be done better, faster. And enabling is different than automating because I want the human involved. And I think the most important one that Brent points out is augmentation. And that's kind of the great unknown right now. It's easy to identify stuff to get rid of, but the art of the possible in terms of how effective a marketer could be, what type of content is possible, what type of value props could be out there, is critically important. So, I've turned that into a question because I think it's an important one on all of our minds, which is how are you guys specifically with examples using AI to eliminate and automate, but more importantly enable, and most importantly, what's the art of the possible? Where do you see the potential to augment and really make things better or different in ways more valuable?
It's a great question. It's a hard question. I think most organizations have to spend the time up front to develop a point of view, right? And a point of view and actually some governance up front and decide the path they're going to take. I mean, one, we have all of our partners out there who are jamming generative AI into their tech stacks, into their platforms here, which is a wonderful thing, but it can create confusion in an enterprise who's having to then go back and put all that technology back through due diligence, right? Wasn't there yesterday, now it's here. I need to go back and take a look at it. You are also deciding if you're going to build something. We built our own large language model, so we have that we've turned on for our entire enterprise, regardless of what job you have. If you're in customer service working the phones, if you're in some back office operation, if you're a marketer there, which we're training every day. You have your Microsoft suite, which is your everyday operation suite that you're using. So we had to then think through what does it mean to enable, what does it mean to augment? And for us, enabling was taking what I'm already doing and starting to eliminate some of that work, deciding what level of work I'm going to eliminate. Augmenting was really kind of then how do I extend that out into something that I'm not able to do today, right? So we have really enabled a lot of our kind of, when I call it first draft of things. So a lot of the content we don't go into, and it's a lot of it, I kind of coined with our people, it's with the I got stuck work, right? I'm trying to brainstorm, I'm trying to come up with a first draft. Now I used to get stuck for a couple of hours trying to think through or working with somebody trying to figure something out, and now it's not. It's that couple of prompts and there's my first draft, and now I can work on, did I really intend this? Is there something else I can kind of improve upon it? It's sped up work, created huge capacity gains for us, and that's really an enabling force for us. The evaluation then becomes, okay, if I've increased my capacity 20, 40%, is it consumable? By, whether it's our distribution, whether it's from our consumers, what is too much of that, and what's actually just bombarding the system, right? So that's kind of the enabling function. Where we do it also in the operational side is that kind of flow standpoint. So when we put it into, kind of our Adobe systems and other types of platforms into Salesforce, it is that kind of running it through and improving things. Yeah, a lot of the things Daniel said about how things can be evaluated from a data source. We're letting AI take care of that. They're constantly evaluating any content that goes out into that system and saying that headline works better, that color works better, that word works better, and running it back through and pushing it back out. We're not touching that, right? We're letting that get automated there. So we're constantly optimizing that content through AI. That is something that's enabling and in some cases augmenting because our people are learning. Where do I see it being kind of the art of possible? This is where it's the top line for us, right? How do I grow? How do I go out and reach new markets I've never been able to reach? How do I actually take my advisors, my agents, who quite frankly are not marketers, and scale them? They're human beings. I'm not going to replace them in a relationship business that's trying to sell products that are meant to last for decades and decades and decades, that have long-standing relationships with families. I want to automate as much as possible, but I want to scale them, right? Where before they could only handle X amount of people and families over time, I want to quadruple that. I want to find ways of really broadening their opportunity set, because in the United States, there are 100 million Americans that are underinsured in this country, have no life insurance or have very little life insurance. They have a bad day, their family has a very bad day. And so I want to make sure we can have an opportunity to serve them as policyholders and members. We're a mutual holding company. We are not publicly held. So we don't have institutional shareholders pounding on our door every 90 days here. So we kind of feel like we have a mission to get as many kind of policyholders as we can and service those Americans. So for us, that's where augmentation is really going to come in. I feel like I need to augment those people so they can actually serve more Americans and more customers.
That is great. You know, when it comes to the art of the possible, Ateet told me an intriguing and confusing story involving beer and steam engines.
So,
how do they go together?
Yeah.
How does this teach us a lesson?
I think that the narrative was, how do you think about augmentation? And, this is an opportunity where a lot of people can, run scared or think their jobs are at risk. And there's a couple of brands from, I believe the steam engine was late 1800s, but steam engine gets invented and there's two beer brands. One goes with an automation, let's make this super efficient and run our brand more efficiently. One thinks bigger, how can we do more? The first is Boddington's, which you can get in an English pub in a small town somewhere. And the second is Guinness, which went with the let's rule the world and put beer and Guinness beer in every single tap throughout the world. And so we think similarly about our talent and our team, because if I have my team, thinking about simple things and focusing on tasks that are solvable with AI, like they're not going to be thinking about the big things. How do we go global? How do we expand from joint accounts and individual accounts to commercial accounts? How do we serve more than just the US with our solution? So the ability to kind of automate some of this is helpful, but if I think about my world as like, cool, my unit economics are better tomorrow or for this quarter, similarly we're privately held, so we have some of that flexibility, then we're gonna build a slightly better business. If we're thinking about AI's ability to augment my talent, and I have just incredibly talented people, now they have the ability to think about different things and serve our clients better and to serve twice as many of them and have a much more rich and trusted relationship. And if I can, every meeting, someone will point out I had a call with this advisor or this client and it went really well and I helped them through this issue. And I really want to applaud my team. I think historically, if I think about I own marketing and ops and revenue, one of the key levers that was a constraint on our business is how do we make ops scale? Because we can keep growing the business, but there will be some ratio of operations to size of business that is fixed. And that was a concern because you're okay, at some point we can get bigger and that's good, but there's going to be an operations team that's going to be a lot larger than it is today if we do it that way. And for us, AI has allowed us to say we don't necessarily have to grow that team as much as we need it. We wanted to, we could on paper just 2 years ago, and we feel a lot better about a small team of professionals servicing our clients when they have needs than it would have been, a call center dynamic, which is a different type of business. And we're in the high net worth, extremely affluent advisor segments, and so those people need high touch. And I think for us, AI is allowing us to provide a lot better service than it would have, we wouldn't be able to provide otherwise. I think one other thing I'll share is on the governance topic. I think a lot of people are, including in this room, myself included, not that long ago, have very little governance. We're oh, they're going to use AI, they're going to use a chatbot to fix an email, wonderful. We've kind of gotten, our audiences, our banks, you guys, affluent advisors and clients whose their privacy and their PII and their balances are all in our systems. And so we definitely spent a little time thinking through what's the governance we need to put in place. The word I used or I've heard is secret cyborgs. If you don't put it in place, your team is going to do it anyway, and then your data will live in whatever free AI tool they're using, as opposed to spending a little time putting in some rules, putting in some governance, putting in a little bit of budget. choosing some tools or giving the team flexibility, but knowing that there's a certain level of privacy or data sharing that won't happen if you decide to put in a small spreadsheet of information for analysis or something that isn't now going to be in the public forum. So that's another like governance thing we think about, and we kind of, between the governance and creating a Slack channel, which we all have Slack channels, ours is called AI Playground, just giving people open opportunities to share and to do things like on the right side of data sharing, while encouraging them to do like other interesting work while they have a little bit of extra free time.
Daniel, you had some interesting insights, not only about how people could be augmented, but the types of people that get augmented. For example, I'm an engineer, and things don't look so good for me in your world. But what do you have to share about
Well, I was being a little harsh on engineers. I was going to talk about augmentation. So I'm responsible for marketing for our private bank, which is a lot of former First Republic. So it's a very high-end and signature Bank of New York. So just similar to what Brent was saying, I mean, what we do is we augment their ability to scale, their ability to reach. So we're able to take, using AI and some of the API plugs we have, we're able to help them surgically identify where there are opportunities, create the tools, whether it's I don't want to say a calling script because that makes me sound very 2022, but a LinkedIn campaign, a conference, a breakfast, the invites, the follow-up, the product strategy, or even the topics that I want to extract from what our CIO has said. So I'm able to take what he publishes yesterday, extract the elements, and this is all using an automated process that we've created within our marketing team to identify the topics that our system thinks are relevant to these targets, which we've identified using, appending IXI data to our customer files. And it says, oh, these zip codes or these people or these streets are the places to go. So that's one way we do it. I also mentioned the idea of wealth transfer. So also just looking at different age cohorts, using, again, this, if those of you are familiar with Equifax IXI, just sort of using some common sense analysis of where we think the greater opportunities are going to be, and then help our private bankers. We have, let's say, 400 of them at this point, a lot in California, in LA, and Bay Area, and being able to direct them and give them the tools to do that. And we can do it with very few people, very efficiently. Back to my earlier point, which is paying attention to what they're asking for, not telling them that they don't know what they're doing, and here's how to do it, but listening to them and then coming back with the same solution you were going to have anyway, but saying, this is what I heard you say, and here's what we can help you with.
In the first presentation, we talked about the funnel, the bow tie, whatever you want to talk about it. And what I took away from that is there is no lack of opportunities to use AI in the demand phase, optimizing for leads. I also heard that there are huge deficiencies in terms of how AI is going to impact our brands, which, from my analysis, is the most valuable financial asset in the business. And also, I've heard 10 times today already that this is a relationship business, and that. So, building on what you talked about this morning, where along the journey do I have opportunities to use AI to impact the brand and relationships?
Well, I think, it's interesting. We're having to think through a little bit on the brand side about things we didn't have to before, right? I mean, when you look at some of the way in which ChatGPT and Claude and others kind of scrape data, they're scraping it across the internet differently than Google was, right? So you have 200 reputation sites that are out there that Trustpilot and everything else is scoring you. They're scraping that data, and high transaction businesses don't tend to score well. Right, so like one part of our business scores really well across that. Our dental business doesn't because it's transactional. Nobody likes claims and nobody likes dentists. So that tends to drag our brand score down a lot. That wasn't getting picked up necessarily in search a couple of years ago. It's getting picked up now. So now I actually have to manage 200 reputation sites, and that's something we have to think about. We're having to deal with things that we didn't have to deal with before, and think about things we didn't have to think about before. Also, we have to think about search differently, right? We're watching scores coming across those platforms, and were we prepared for that? Luckily, I think our strategies helped jump us into a bit of a lead kind of position in many respects there, but we didn't do that intentionally. We kind of fell backwards into it there. So, the reputation part of it is really something you have to be intentional about. You're going to have to think a little bit differently. On the relationship side of the house, our business is a relationship business here, and brand and relationship go hand in hand, and reputation and relationship go hand in hand. When an agent or an advisor puts a client with us, that client is trusting that advisor put them with the right business. They place that business with somebody that advisor trusts is going to do the right thing, easy to do business with, has the right kind of digital tool set for them, and is going to evaluate us based on all the other digital relationships that they have as well. And so as other companies are scrambling to put in better self-service, better AI, better chatbots, better other tools that are out there, they're going to evaluate us in the same manner here. And so we're going to have to keep our investment levels going up from an experiential perspective there as well. So it's a huge opportunity for us. I'm in the insurance space. We kind of are the tip of the tail of financial services from a change perspective. We're slow as a part of the industry, so the more we can invest and faster we can invest in change, the better off that we'll be. And the more, quite frankly, distribution will attract to ourselves because they're asking different things there, especially the younger part of distribution that's coming into the industry. They expect things very differently than the generation before them.
I think you see it right. It's a bit of a leapfrog opportunity. And you guys have more to add?
Yeah, I think I'll add one thing, which is similarly, we find that the data that gets searched on an AI tool is deeper, it's different, and we want to make sure that we're from like a hygiene perspective. I used to not worry about an old web page with some old rates being archived because who's ever going to find it? ChatGPT is going to find it. And so you have to make sure that everything you host and is quotable or is searchable is just a lot cleaner than it used to be. And that's the same with even earned media. There's an earned media, an article that came out last week and there's a misquote or it's not quite accurate. That is going to find its way into where people search for, Max, which is a high yield platform. People are going to look up how should I use Max or one of its competitors? People are going to Google that, going to put it in ChatGPT, and they're going to draw on information that has to be accurate, or they're going to assume it's right, even if it's an archive thing we've put out or an article from 2 weeks ago that had some inaccuracies. So we pay a lot more attention to our footprint online just to make sure, because we know people are using these AI tools to compare us and others in the space, and we just want to make sure it's accurate.
And I would just add what Brent was referring to, and Ateet as well, the handoff, once you get to the sale, the handoff to the customer management is really a killer, right? It's like in football, the offense, puts up a touchdown, and then you hand it over to the defense, and they let in a touchdown. You're like, what was that all for? What was the point of scoring 7 points?
If it's the Giants, they fumble.
Well, Jackson Dart. So threw 2 interceptions for those of you who are watching that game. So that's a real concern, and a lot of that is a lot of the customer service, with the best of intentions, has flaws in it. Talent augmentation is kind of a euphemism. So that's a real concern for me and for us.
Well, I'm excited to dig into talent. So I read a lot of analysis. I'm an analyst. The talent issue with AI barbells. On one hand, working inside my clients, there's a lot of complexity to running the modern marketing machine. Agencies have to connect the dots across all these different channels and programs. And anytime my clients try to do something really cool, like we've talked about today, like identify a segment, personalize content for personas in that segment, deploy media in exactly the places that those folks like to engage, the feedback I get is that's really labor intensive. And so connecting the dots and deploying hyper-targeted segments, persona-based content, omni-channel campaigns is really labor intensive. On the other side, if you look at every job description in the world, we're knowledge workers whose jobs could arguably be 100% eliminated by AI. So which one is it? How come every really cool marketing program I ever bring up in a meeting is it's too much work and oh my God, our jobs are going away? Which one is it, and how do we start thinking about, and you said it really nicely, how do I develop better talent? How do I accelerate their development, which is really cool? How do I rationalize where I need to rationalize so I can deploy them? And how do I redeploy them? So, I mean, it's a fascinating question. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the first part, it's not an either or. I don't think it ever really is. But I do think the talent question is something that we have to be trying to think ahead of the curve on. I mean, I advise for our business school at UNL and impress the professors on, okay, you know, my concern is that you haven't changed your curriculum in 20 years.
Amen. Amen.
And you know, what you're turning out today here are the really smart kids that are coming in, but they're not prepared for what's coming. And their question is, okay, well, what should we do? And I'm like, well, that is not my job. That is actually your job. And sorry that you're only worried about getting research published and not worried about actually your students. Sorry, I'm not going on my soapbox. Anyway, so you know, what we've kind of looked at here is, you know, in some respects, I'm fortunate in that I have actually a decent number of members of our teams that are going to go through retirement here in the next couple of years. I've actually chosen to hire some kids right out of college, and I've actually compressed their training into about a 9 to 12 month time period that we usually would take 2 to 3 years. They're through kind of a set of really being very focused on internships that are paid year-long internships, not summer internships, and just trying to accelerate that learning around the industry. We've started to pay for classes inside the university that actually continue some of that learning in there with real business problems that we're putting in front of them there, because I need them to get up the ladder as fast as possible in there, so that 3 years of what I think is going to be what they traditionally would have learned, that's going to go away. That work there, I think, is going to get eliminated here. We're starting to see some of it now. And I need to be able to have them have a higher level of thinking about how we're going to use this technology, not the actual activities that the technology is going to do, but new ways of actually using it, reaching new markets, thinking about larger types of things, doing more kind of R&D work and more piloting, more reading signals, more micro moments, those types of things, trying to be more real time in how they do things and getting the technology to actually be more responsive here. I mean, the fact that right now I can go and our retirement plans website, I know if somebody is looking at taking a loan out and hitting that button and a report will pop out on there, we should be acting on that. I should be letting the advisor know, the plan participant know, the sponsor know right now that you have people in your organization who are looking at taking loans out. We need to be reminding them of the long-term plan, the importance of compound interest, all of these kind of basic things to get them to stop from doing a bad behavior or understand the need of what's driving that behind there. It could be economic, could be something going on with the employer, whatever it happens to be in there. And that's not real time, that's kind of near term. Here. Those tools are in place, but organizations don't have the skill levels in place right now to take advantage of that. I need talent that can actually start to get us thinking ahead, and technology that's going to enable them to be able to act on that.
I apologize for editorializing, but underlying Brent's comments are two forces of gravity that you can't ignore. I'm reading right off the back of my book. The top marketing professor in the country said what Brent said. Historically, we've taught the science of growth as a set of individual disciplines, but the real world problem of growing a business is interdisciplinary in nature. So one thing is we've got to break down these learning silos, and the business schools, you know, there's one business school in America, Johns Hopkins, who actually teaches this stuff. That's a problem. But you've got another problem. If you look at the value of your business, let's look at the value of Microsoft, the stock price. Analysts will put that at it's 90% intangible assets, and specifically, it's an intangible asset called codified knowledge. Now, codified knowledge is technically software by definition, but I want to make the point when we talk about AI, all of your systems drip knowledge, know-how. If an RFP, know-how sits in your brain, know-how sits in marketers' brains, people in market researchers, all of that knowledge somehow, whether it's NLP, natural language processing, or recorded calls, or RFPs, ultimately it drips into that pan that's at the bottom of your Weber grill, or a reduction if you're a French chef, because I think we have one here. But that knowledge is an asset. And I have seen organizations who acknowledge that and build AI knowledge bases that accelerate training, that make the average call center rep just as smart as your head of product marketing. And it can drive recommender engines that can paint a Picasso picture in terms of the next solution for the client. And so a couple points underlying what Brent said was, we have to mash these disciplines together, and can AI do that? And second, how do we harness this knowledge and deliver it through people? I swear, you can take the youngest college graduate in your organization, and they could be speaking the deepest knowledge from their most experienced advisor in a matter of minutes. And so I just wanted to underscore two of those currents that underlie what you said.
And I will just quickly add here, I said it earlier that I think marketing has an expanded role as we move into the future. We need people who actually understand their role that marketing will play in helping the experience from a customer service perspective, in the way in which operations run efficiently and think about that experience, in the way in which sales are going to be optimized, especially from a digital perspective as well. They have to understand the business, not just marketing. If they aren't going to understand the business, they may get automated out.
I cut you guys off. Can you weigh in more on this topic?
Yeah, one little thing, which is in additive, I agree with everything Brent said. I think that the other thing for us is we have talent that, we think, okay, well, how do we use them more? How do we use them in different scenarios? It used to be like, okay, well, we're in the middle of a project or middle of a partnership conversation, so it's kind of strange to introduce someone at that time and how they're going to get up to speed. I'm like, well, I can spend an hour with them and go over the last 6 months of this meeting and these people and this deck. But the ability for AI to synthesize a lot of raw information and not have the bias of one individual who was in 60% of the meetings is incredible. So, you can drop all your Trello notes or any of the case notes, all of the content from, the last 6 months into, again, in the right environment, and then have the person say, okay, what are the highlights? What are the next steps? You can have it engage with the content in a way that's like, let me make sure I understand, then have them type up a couple of sentences, and then the AI tools can help correct and refine that. So getting someone up to speed, certainly as new individuals and new talent, agreed 100%, but even existing talent that's being introduced to new work feels really hard, or has felt really hard historically, because they're in the meeting the first time, but they don't have anything to contribute. The second meeting, they're there again, and then it's awkward. And now you can say, hey, listen, you're going to get to speed quickly. And you're going to own, for me, the operations elements of a meeting that you didn't really need an ops person in, but now that person is up to speed and is able to contribute and really show the strength of our organization very quickly. So that's something we've been doing a lot of, is just kind of throwing a lot of raw content into an AI engine and getting someone up to speed on a specific project very quickly.
So, so it's an interesting question, because I was going to have a different response after what Brent said, then after what Steven said, and what after you said. But now I'll talk more about talent, because that might be relevant in a different way. So I can't handle it when guys don't understand how the business works. It's just a total zero. So in my world, banking, investment management, wealth management, if you don't know the difference, let's just talk about commercial lending. If you don't know what the difference between a yield is versus fee income, if you don't understand what lending to institutions is, how it works, how it's priced, what the add-ons are, A, and B, you got to be a writer. It doesn't mean you're going to be writing copy, but you have to be able to think in a sort of articulate way that integrates the problem and the solution. So I would use the analogy of the forest, the trees, the bark, the sap, the micro beasts inside that sap. You've got to be able to see the whole thing. So when I remember when I went to, I used to kind of co-teach a course up at at Yale at the School of Organization and Management on branding and financial. I remember the first time, it was the year 2000, I was working at Smith Barney Citigroup. I went in and I thought like, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. I'm going to present some stuff about Citigroup, and they're going to be like, oh, this is awesome, this guy knows so much. And they just tore me apart. It was a terrible experience. And I can handle getting torn apart, but this was awful. They're like, this is a terrible brand, Professor Darst, and all this stuff. Like, how can Citi stand for it? And I realized, like, yeah, you know what? It's easy to tear something down. It's really hard to build something. So when I look at talent, like right now I'm trying to hire a quote-unquote writer analyst. And there are some great writers who don't understand like what banking is or how it works or what a balance sheet is, what an income statement is. And then there are some great people who understand the business. But when I say, some like, can you write? Do you care about the way a PowerPoint looks or something to that effect? They look at me like I have two heads. So AI augments talent, but it's still, there is a skill set that is absolutely critical to being meaningful. And just to comment on what Ateet's saying, I think being part of the conversation, being a good listener, is really critical for building trust with wealthy people, with companies, with big companies, with treasurers, CFOs, and CEOs, and sort of being, and this is a classic thing in the wealth business, being airdropped in the third inning or in the seventh inning, the bottom of the ninth inning, is really challenging. Yeah. And the prospect or the client is going to be like, who's this guy? Who's this woman? So I do think that integrating, doing the screens, the bringing together of data and organizing it so you can know what the next question should be or what the operational steps should be is terrific. But at the same time, you've got to be able to be close to the prospect because they're not going to trust you. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of tens of millions of dollars. It's a big deal, and they want to know that the guy or the woman is really part of the conversation.
This is a long conversation today, and I think you guys are all going to be here for a while, right? But we do have time for a couple questions, and I know I have a ton, but does anyone have a question for the audience on some of these issues? I think we have someone with a microphone coming to help you. I got to run and get something over here.
I was just going to ask, I think some of the challenges we have are around like the selections of the LLMs that we're tapping into. So who's driving those decisions? Because the challenge we have at our firm is it's all being decided by IT,
Yeah.
not necessarily the marketers and those
Yeah.
who have a vested interest in some of those things.
So we actually established a chief AI officer and an AI department. And then we have our governance committee is myself, the CIO, the CAIO, and our chief legal officer kind of is a dotted line in. We didn't want her to have too much direct linkage into those decisions. She just kind of sits there over the top a little bit.
Yeah, I'll just say we bifurcate product eng and the rest of the organization because we know that our product engineering teams are going to use things differently and use different tooling. And if you're like, we're going to use Claude, and whether you're vibe coding or whether you're coming with marketing campaigns like Claude's our solution, it doesn't work that way. So I think we've been very clear that like product eng is going to have a slightly different ecosystem of tools, and they can make some different decisions that are optimized for the work they're doing compared to broader organization rules.
I would just say, similar to what Ateet's saying, we have definitely bifurcated. So the marketing product design group we have our own governance, similar to Brent.
Any other questions before we move to our next panel? Well, first off, I've done
Hello.
this. Oh,
I had a quick one. Do we have time?
oh, yeah, you do, absolutely.
All right. How you guys doing? My name is Nikolai Wozniak. I think it was Daniel. You gave a nod to salespeople. I appreciate that. I am a salesperson here looking for leads. But seriously, my question, being brand new, so I came from fintech and then SaaS. Met a good friend of mine who's now the CEO of his agency, 45-year-old agency, took it over from family. Brought me over to help with sales. He said, look, I'm not a sales guy. You are. I know you are. All right. So I'm learning marketing and I'm learning finance. He wants to get deeper in financial services because that's where they kind of got their break. My question is around being a sales guy looking to get deeper. I've had really good conversations with leaders at companies like SoFi, PNC, and the theme that keeps coming up that you guys haven't talked about yet, maybe you will, is regulatory and financial, and AI. My question is, does AI respect or overstep, or how does it play with regulation or regulatory? Because I've heard consistently from customers trying to be a good listener, or prospects, I should say, our problem is getting projects out within a certain window of time, and then AI helping or not helping. And we're trying to get through that window, or to use a sports analogy, the goalpost, right? There you go. So, you guys want to tackle that? Thank you.
I'll do a quick answer, and then you guys, please. So this goes back to who you work with on your team or with your partner groups. You need to work with people who understand the banking environment, who understand the regulatory environment. which is why working with agencies, a different panel, is such a pain in the neck now, because they are like, well, we did this, but we don't understand the regulations. That's totally
Well,
unacceptable.
some agencies.
Some agencies.
I'm with an agency.
But my point, I couldn't be more clear. It's really, it's table stakes. You need to know what you can say and what you can't say.
Yeah.
You need to understand what's going on. You need to be current, and you need to have a very good relationship with legal and compliance. Is
Yeah.
what I would say. It's not an AI response, but that's the reality in the real world.
Yeah, I think relying on AI to do your regulatory compliance, is this regulatorily appropriate, is this compliant, is like, we're not there, I don't think, technology-wise, and our team is still having eyeballs on things before they go out the door if they're going to be important and subject to regulatory compliance and risk. It's really important for our organization, so we don't use AI for that. It is an additional step still.
And for the agencies and solution providers, I have a lot of empathy for you out there because the landscape's continuing to shift.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have the regulatory bodies, the national ones, SEC, and the banking regulators, everybody else. On the insurance side, you have state by state by state by state regulators on top of that. And so they're trying to come together as a body to come up with regulations, but the regulators don't understand it either. And so this is going to be a shifting landscape, and you're going to have to be flexible and shift along with it here. So I've got empathy. You have to know coming in the door day one how the landscape sits today. Here, and you have to realize that it's going to be different probably tomorrow.
Well, I've done a lot of panels, as you might guess, and I really enjoy this one in particular.